Hey, welcome back, everybody. This episode is brought to you by Sparkling Charms Pediatric Dentistry, your friendly neighborhood dental practice for kids in South Baltimore. At Sparkling Charms, they believe in making every child's smile shine. From routine checkups to gentle dental care, try saying that fast, gentle dental care, their experienced team is dedicated to providing top-notch dental services in a fun and welcoming environment. So book your child's appointment today and let them experience the magic of a sparkling smile. You can find them at sparklingcharmsdentistry.com, located in the Southside Marketplace, right by the Giant on Ford Avenue. Let's dive into today's episode. In this episode, guest host Jennifer Walker sits down with Eleanor Graves, the visionary founder of Refuge Design Workshop here in Baltimore. Eleanor takes us on a fascinating journey from her beginnings as an English major and Zen Buddhism practitioner to her current role as an interior designer with a passion for sustainable and service-oriented home improvement. We'll dive into how the principles of Zen Buddhism have shaped Eleanor's unique design philosophy and hear about the creation of her innovative business. Eleanor also shares her approach to making design education accessible to everyone. Eleanor and Refuge Design Workshop are here to help homeowners maximize their space effectively and intentionally, something many of us here living in small spaces and row homes could definitely benefit from. So, hope you enjoy the episode, and thank you, Jen, for joining us again here on South Baltimore Now as a guest host. You can find their links in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome to Eleanor Graves from Refuge Design Workshop here in Baltimore. It's so nice to have you here today.
It's so nice to be here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about what you do, just right from the beginning. Can you talk a little bit about your career background and, of course, about your current work, but then the road you took to get there?
I'd be happy to. I'm an interior designer, and my business is Refuge Design Workshop. I did not come to this early in my life. It's been an emergent thing later in my life. I started out actually as an English major, and I was in literature. I'm a creative writer, and I was tracking towards academia. But I graduated from undergrad. I got a job selling ad space because I wasn't really ready to do anything else. And that was like an eye-opening experience about the nature of making money, the nature of meeting other people, and how to engage in the world. And to be honest, it was a little overwhelming. And then I learned how to meditate. I got introduced into Zen Buddhism, which was a kind of like massive left turn from where I thought I was going to go. But there was something about the practice, the really structured approach of Zen Buddhism that spoke to me and gave me what I needed as a creative person in the world. And so I did that for 5 years. I lived in a monastery, which is a very scheduled lifestyle. I liken it to being in the military, but with slightly different outcomes and slightly different goals. But I decided I wanted to immerse myself as deeply as I could into that. And then when I left, my orientation to the world was a little different. I wanted to find a path that was more service oriented. And so I started back on the track towards literature and writing and academia, but then I made a sort of definitive break from that and got a coach and really thought about what are my skills, what are my strengths, and how can I apply that in our world in a way that would be beneficial. And that's how I got into interior design. There was even like a website that was like, what color is my parachute? Which is like a retro way of finding a career. So that's how I ended up in graduate school for interior design. And when I was there, I got a job at Amicus Green Building Center, which is in Maryland. It's in Kensington, Maryland. I learned about the world of sustainable products, things that you could bring into your home when you're doing a home improvement project that are filtered through the lens of sustainability. And I got to work with an architect while I was there. So I really got my sort of on-the-job training through that process.
Great. I want to go back for a second to when you were talking about Zen Buddhism and living in the monastery. What was it about Zen Buddhism that drew you in? Where was the monastery? What was that experience?
Oh, yeah. I think other creatives probably can relate to this, but There's something, first of all, it's really hard in our world to be an artist, to be a creative. There isn't a real easy track. There's nothing, you're not really oriented on a clear career path. So I felt that kind of as a kind of chaotic piece of my life. And sitting down in meditation, and especially with the way Zen Buddhism does it, it's very calming, and it gets you just to settle and to let go as much as possible. That's really the baseline of the practice. And we practice over and over again, letting go of everything. We have a posture, we sit upright. So we also have this structure. We talk a lot about form and emptiness, which ended up being really informative in terms of the world of design as well. But you can rely on the structure, the posture of the practice to hold you up. You can rely on the schedule of a monastery, of the Zen monastery. And that was in California. So I started out at San Francisco Zen Center. I was living in California. And the monastery is called Tassajara Zen Mountain Center. And that's in the Ventana Wilderness, which is south of Santa Cruz. It's in the Big Sur area, but inland in the mountains there.
And you said there are some principles of Zen Buddhism that kind of connect with design in some way, maybe in terms of like minimalism or finding like
Yeah.
certain structures to focus on and weeding things out.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. Thinking about a row home or a limitation of a space, and anything that feels like it's like a restriction, or even if it doesn't feel like a limitation, to be honest, but something that has a form to it. I like the analogy of a row house, actually, because it can feel like it's too small, especially for a family. And so you're dealing with the confines of these four walls in a relatively narrow space. And at the same time, there's a lot of life going on. There's still a lot of joy, and there's a lot of unlimited freedom and unmeasurable dynamic, whether it's positive or negative or neutral. There's this way that those four walls, no matter the size, can hold that for you. Sometimes there is a problem, like sometimes those four walls feel too small. And this is where design actually thrives, when you can see your limitations and you realize, okay, I actually have a design problem here. Then you work within that in a strategic way to discover, new solutions, new ways of freeing up the space so that it makes it more functional.
I can't wait to hear some examples of that, like
Yeah.
once you get to that point. So your main business is Refuge Design Workshop, is that right?
Yeah, Refuge Design Workshop is my business. Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that? When did you found the company? Do you have specialties in terms of parts of the home that you focus on? Who are your clients?
I can. I started Refuge in 2020. I had actually come to Baltimore to renovate vacant properties. I became a co-investor with my pop. And I really learned about the nature of houses that are uninhabitable and what it takes them to bring them back. What it takes in terms of materials, contractors, bureaucracies around permitting, the whole works. And I got inspired to create a new model that would become more accessible for homeowners to get expert support around home improvement, home maintenance, and renovations if they decide that's what they need to do. I think of Refuge Design Workshop actually as a hybrid, because I do offer one-on-one services that is more typical of an interior design business. So that is where you hire a person, they come to your home and they work with you individually or as a couple. We understand the problem that you have in your home, the solution that you're looking for, and I do all these steps and stages and use all these design tools to help you come up with solutions. And then I help you with the logistics of that as well. The other part of my business is something I have a couple online programs, and the first one was the core one I designed, is called The Workshop. And this is where people can learn these basic skills that normally I provide. They can learn them and use them for themselves, so they can apply it in their home. And there are three categories of learning is how I think of it. There's the design process, which is creating floor plans. You learn how to scale a floor plan, develop a design concept, develop a style using color and material palettes, and then how to find all the furniture, the fixtures that you need, the sort of equipment you need for your renovation. So that's the design phase. That's part one. And then the other two are about navigating the mechanicals and how the systems of your home, the plumbing, the electrical, the HVAC, those intersect with your design, and then how to manage your contractors, how to vet them, how to hire them, how to build accountability into those relationships. Because that ended up being one of my personal bigger challenges when I was in the renovation space for my own projects, was just building better relationships with contractors. It was a journey, I'll put it that way. And I know I'm not alone. And I know that homeowners all over the world have not always the most straightforward path when it comes to contractors. But if they can learn these design skills, they can learn the design process, and they can understand how their house works, that gives them this wealth of knowledge. They become their own experts. They become more empowered in these conversations that they need to have with the contractor.
Are you from Baltimore? You said that you moved back here to work with your dad.
Yeah, I moved around a lot as a kid, but most recently I was living in Washington, D.C., and my parents were in California. So I was studying Buddhism in California. My parents happened to also be there. We all landed in California around the same time in the late 90s. And then in 2003, I moved to DC. And then 2015, I came to Baltimore.
So then how did you choose Baltimore as where you wanted to go to renovate these vacant properties? Had you been reading about the city and were interested in how you could help from a design perspective?
Yeah, this touches back to my earlier need to provide like a service. And as a Zen student, you hear a lot of talk about being beneficial in the world, and you start to absorb that as like a way to make your life more meaningful and become a happier person. I mean, these are some sort of basic self-help ideas, but I really loved that if helping others was also helping me, sort of a wholesome selfishness, another way I've heard it, that when my dad who had the idea of flipping houses, we were talking about it, and I kind of know that there's this exploitative side of it. And when I looked at the scene in DC, it was very much things had already gentrified. There was a displacement of Black people out of historically Black neighborhoods, and the property values had skyrocketed. And I couldn't find a way into the investing world, mainly financially, but it also felt like I was entering a very problematic sphere. Whereas I thought Baltimore coming here had a greater need for people like me who had design skills and who could put some money into a property and bring it back into use. That would be something beneficial. And honestly, that was a little naive. The basic idea is nice, but it is a real estate market still, and that is a very complicated and sometimes problematic industry. And this is a whole other whole podcast. Anyone who wants to have that conversation, we could go into it. But it's a hard world. Real estate investing and it has implications for homeowners. And I'll just add that the stakes are pretty high when you own a home. And so that's magnified when you become a property investor.
What part of Baltimore do you live in now?
I live in Northeast. Most people know about Lauraville, Hamilton and Lauraville. I live in Arcadia, which is just adjacent to Lauraville.
And did you ever go through this renovation, this sort of process yourself when you moved here?
Oh yeah. Yeah. My house was in good shape from just maintaining a kind of stasis. Like there weren't really any active leaks, but all the systems needed to be upgraded. I needed a new electrical panel. I needed to update the plumbing, broken hot water heater, new furnace, and then upgrading the kitchen, which was, I think it was the existing kitchen, but they had put a gas stove in. So my house is built in 1920s. And yeah, and then I also inherited some yard work. So learning how to navigate that and incorporate the help I needed with that. Yeah, the whole thing.
So I want to shift into talking about right sizing with design, which I believe is your online course. And I was hoping we could just start with talking about what right sizing means. I feel like we've maybe touched on it a little bit already, but maybe we can go a little bit deeper.
This is a new program I started this year, Right Sizing with Design. I'm using the term right sizing really it's downsizing, but the aim is to draw people into a more intentional approach to finding out what they need to keep as a way to decide what they want to get rid of, because that process is very loaded. And I understand that. And I think that just trying to bulldoze your way through clearing out can actually create more problems later on. So emphasizing your own particular needs and what you need for your lifestyle, for your particular household. That's my goal with right sizing with design. And my audience here was actually my mom, first of all, who is in her 80s. And my dad passed away several years ago now. This sort of precipitated a chain reaction where now it's time to simplify what it means to run a house because there isn't this partner to help her out. So we've been talking and I was like, I have this idea and let's talk about what you want and what you're going for. And to be honest, this is not actually how she wants to do it. There's also family dynamics. But then I was talking to a mentor. And so she actually helped me flesh it out a little bit more because she's a young retiree, but she really loves my ideas around these online classes and spreading the gospel of interior design to more people. And also she has a sort of sense of like how to market my product, my business. And she's like, what about working more for people who are older? What about targeting a program for seniors? And this was really helpful because I'm new to marketing, but I have to do a lot of it for my business. And so this is part of like meeting the market where it is. Whereas the workshop, this other interior design program, is like I created a new model. And it's a heavy lift to teach people about it, what it is, how it works, that they need it, that it's useful. Whereas the right sizing with design program is like people are actively looking for help right now around how do they deal with the excess of stuff? How do they make their household simpler? And how this relates to aging in place. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, this is actually really great. I need this because I'm always also dealing with clutter and accumulation, especially clothes. And then I do like long for those days in the monastery where I lived in a room and I had a bed and I had a table and I had a cubby, and like somehow I made it work and had a really good life. So it's not realistic to try to get back to that level of minimalism, but to really take a more intentional approach and think through what do I really need for the lifestyle I'm living now. I keep coming back to that.
I think that would be so useful for so many of us here in Baltimore. My place is 1,000 square feet and I live with 5 people. And so when you first got in touch, I was thinking, oh, I could definitely use this. So I can't wait to hear more about this course. Can you talk a little bit about what is covered in the course, how it's structured, how it could be useful to people who are living in these small spaces in Baltimore or anywhere?
I just want to say that's a lot for 1,000 square feet because we're all humans and we all bring all this individual uniqueness and different needs, but finding something that you can work on together. So I'm actually starting to think through also like how can families do this together? Because it would be great to bring kids on board to start thinking also like how do kids learn about how a house works and how to navigate spatial relationships and to have a role in creating the space that everyone needs and they need for themselves. So right sizing with design, we start again with the design process. And so it is documenting your existing conditions and creating your proposed floor plans. So whether it's good to start with a single room. One of the young people can work their own room and as a way to experiment. And the people who are the decision makers of the house are maybe making a floor plan of the living space, the communal areas. And then you go through this process of measuring. And once you've created a scale drawing of your space, you can play around with what we call schematics. And this is a way of testing different floor plans using pencil and paper. And so you get to see like, okay, if I move the sofa over here, this frees up this floor space. I could do more yoga or something like that. Or if I just took this out, how does it work now if I've taken out something, I removed an element, and then this fits? And so once you start experimenting with putting things in, taking things out, moving it around, you start to have a sense of, this is what's going to maximize flow. This is going to meet the priorities. And then after that, like once you have that clarified, that's 90% of it. But then you get a little bit more into the colors and materials. So I've included that. You do get access to some of the color theory modules and some of the material modules. So like how to find a balanced color palette that sort of suits your style. And then what I really emphasize that's a little distinct from the core workshop in right sizing with design is the inventorying and the tracking. So this is the logistical part, because there's 300,000 things in our home, like for an average American, which I don't want to even say that out loud because it just immediately overwhelms people. But this process of right sizing can be overwhelming because of that. So having a really effective system for getting your stuff organized around, here's what's going to be kept, here's what's going to leave the house, and here's the stuff that's going to be donated, here's the stuff that's going to be sold, and here's the dump run, here's the stuff I just need to call a hauler for. So having that in an orderly, systematized way that you don't have to always remember things. That's the benefit of having an effective system like this, tracking and organizing, is that you can reference it. I like to use Google spreadsheets, keeping these online so that multiple people can access these documents and just, oh, what are we doing with the cupboard that we decided we're going to get rid of? Oh yeah, I'm going to check. Here says, oh yeah, we're donating it to this organization that benefits this group that we want to support. And that gets you little by little to your end result. But I will say it's work. It's work. It's good to have a system.
Yeah, it definitely, I'm looking around at the room I'm in right now and I'm like, whoa, that does seem like a lot of work. But I like the idea of writing it down and having it in the Google Doc, and everybody in the family can look at it and everybody knows what's going on. So is the course itself, is it a video course? Is it written material that people are reading through? How does that look?
Yeah, it's an online video course. So there's a series of modules. I'm forgetting off the top of my head how many videos. I think it's about 6. And there's a combination. There's like the how-to videos, so how to measure and how to do a scale drawing and how to use schematics. I show you how, and you can do it along with me in the video. And then there's also instructions that are given verbally in a video about how to use the tracking system and the organizing system. And then you also get the templates that I use so that those are already preloaded, and then you get access to those. And then the core workshop, I like people to be more engaged with me. And sometimes we actually form a group for the workshop. For right sizing, I have made this a little bit more independent. People can do it on their own. And then I have embedded in a variety of different modules, just a link to schedule an online meeting with me if you want. If you need extra support, there's an extra fee for that. But the cost for right sizing, which is $99, is designed to be really affordable, really accessible. And then you decide, I need an hour consultation where I talk through issues that I'm having, or I need more clarity about how to deal with XYZ, and you have the option of getting a little extra support. Yeah.
So right sizing with design is its own course. People can sign up to get support from you. I might have missed this. What is the core workshop?
Oh, the workshop is the earlier piece. So when I set up Refuge Design Workshop, the hybrid was like, there's one where you hire me as your interior designer, and then I call it the workshop. And sometimes I call it the core workshop because the workshop is maybe not clear enough name, sort of part of my marketing mystery that I'm on, how to brand, all of that stuff. But the workshop is where you learn the skills, but it's the distinction between right sizing with design and the workshop. The workshop is where you're engaged in this whole design process, but you're really going for a renovation. The end goal is a kitchen remodel or a new addition or a bathroom remodel. And you're working through understanding the design goals you have, but then how do the mechanicals interface and how you're going to work with a contractor. And so for that, there's more interaction. That's built into the price, is we're going to meet regularly. Sometimes we can actually form a group and there's a cohort, and that's really fun because people can share ideas with each other. That's a little different than right sizing is more individual and set your own pace, and you're doing it pretty much on your own unless you want to reach out to me and set up a call.
I love how there's all kinds of different options based on financials and like what you're looking for. That's great. So I'm going to go at this from 2 directions. Can you either share a couple of success stories from right sizing with design, or maybe take us through Baltimore row home and like think of a fictitious person, how people might use this course to sort of attack a room in the house?
Yeah, I have a live example, but it's still in progress. Someone who's a friend who I know who lives in Oregon, and she's a new empty nester, but she still has 1 kid at home. So she had 3 kids, 2 kids are out of the house, 1 kid's at home, and she has a partner. So there's this transition happening in the home. So I just know her progress. We haven't found the final outcome because she's still working on it. But I love this example because of the transition, the nature of the transition. She she has this opportunity in her home and she sees that and she's excited. And one of the things about her is that she works full time. She works in environmental policy, but she's also a watercolorist. So she decompresses with art. She's actually really incredible artist. And then the other thing is that she and her partner host a lot of gatherings. This is just part of their weekly, at least one gathering a week that they have multiple people are in the house. And then they have the youngest child still there finishing high school. But they have these two empty rooms. And so part of it is evaluating what is the space of these two empty rooms, that what purpose can they provide? Is there stuff we can move out of the communal area into these rooms so that when we have gatherings, there's more flow, there's more seating, there's more surface area for drinks, more places at the table, a larger table even. That's the sort of area she's working in. And she's also, this artistic side of her, she's also really part of what drew her to this particular program was this opportunity to go deeper with color theory and thinking about how to also just change the color palette of the house. And so she's got that in progress. I have thought about like a fictitious person in a row house in South Baltimore because I have worked on these row houses myself, both in my own projects, my investment projects, but also with clients. And one client she had an open plan first floor of the row house. And you walk in and the living room's right there. And in the living room, there's a sofa, but there's also the home office for her partner who's working from home a couple days a week. And there's also a bicycle. And there's also a TV. And this all feels very typical. And then you move further in and there's the kitchen. And so like it blends. There's places to sit, but there's also just the door that opens right there. So one of the things with this client was creating this floor plan and thinking about how we could create zones of activity. And part of that for her and her partner, it was really talking with each other about, I want this space to be reserved for this or that. And so therefore, if they can come to an agreement, then the priority is we're going to keep this in the room. We're going to keep, let's say they prioritize the home office, just for argument's sake. They prioritize the home office and the bicycle is going to fit in there. And they're going to have a desk that's comfortable next to the window, which gives him some nice daylight. And then that means they're going to move the living area in somewhere. Maybe they can partition with the sofa. They can put the back of the sofa against the office space. And this can create a sense of a separation. And then the sofa seating faces in and they can create more of it's smaller, but it is a more comfortable seating area. And maybe tall plants can also act as a dividing line. Then they have, both of them are getting what they need. So that process requires the floor plan, creating a proposed design that they've been able to work on together. And then once that's decided, it's okay, these things stay, these things go. And then how to track and then navigating the logistics around that.
I'm looking at my space and I'm thinking that is exactly what this room I'm sitting in looks like. There's a TV and a couch, but my son's drum set is over there and I work at this table here. So I love that zones of activity example, like trying to figure out how you can partition things off. I think that'll be a really useful idea for a lot of people.
Yeah, I just want to touch on, like, a lot of people do come to me talking when they have these smaller spaces and we're talking about right sizing. They're like, because maybe we do just need to move. Maybe we do just need a bigger space. And my response is go through this process and evaluate it. It will emerge with your budget, with your evaluation and your reevaluation of your space. It will emerge what is the real priority. And if the real priority is a bigger space, actually, then this can help you make that decision. But that's a big decision.
Yeah, I like the idea of going through all the steps and then you can know that it's an informed decision because you've thought it through and tried to think about how your space could work for you.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly
good
right.
point.
Yeah.
So, Eleanor, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about your upcoming free webinar.
Thanks so much for asking. Yeah, I do. So this part of what I do to introduce people to these new programs is host free webinars. The way you sign up is on my website, refugedesignworkshop.com. There's a link right on the homepage. And then you get a link to the Zoom. And, I have over the years become a very practical person when it comes to home and maintaining a space, but I'm learning from feedback from people that there's a lot of emotional component to it too. Home is a kind of loaded concept, and there's partly the family dynamic, but there's also societal pressures and the financial asset piece of it also is a big one. So what I am doing in this workshop is to think through, how do we want to feel in our space, and think about what is it that we are struggling with our house. So I have a guided sort of activity for us. It's called emotional mapping, and it's basically just visualizing your routines and walking through the space and evaluating just with a pen and paper, jotting some notes, and then giving yourself a little space and time to think through what you would like out of that process. And then there's also this great relief people get when they can hear from others that they're not the only ones going through this. And not everyone feels comfortable sharing, but these kind of group get-togethers, these free webinars do provide that opportunity to hear from other people who are comfortable sharing. Like, they can say, this is what we're working on, and these are our challenges. They can provide a service that way, helping other people who feel isolated in the home. Homes can feel pretty isolating. And the other piece of the free webinar is we're going to do a little mini space planning. In the webinar, we're going to do a mini space planning workshop so that people can, with a pencil paper, really try it out for themselves and just get a sense of how that works, that it's doable, and how it helps. And then I'm planning to share the recording. So anyone who can't join live, my recommendation is to sign up anyway, and then you'll automatically get the recording in your email box.
I'm going to sign up as soon as we get off of this call. I think those will be really useful.
Awesome. I'm so glad.
Yeah. So Eleanor, I really appreciate your time today. Is there anything else that you want to share that maybe I didn't ask you or that we didn't touch on?
One thing that it keeps coming up is, I think about this a lot because of marketing and learning to market, and then working with people also individually, that the home it can be a great stressor for any number of reasons. But the benefit of having some of these skills, some of these design skills, management skills, understanding the mechanicals, is like at the top of the list is like your own comfort and enjoyment. But it also is the improved value of your house, which just compounds your ease around the home. This is, for most of us, our biggest financial asset. So I just really want to emphasize, if your house and this whole situation of home ownership is stressing you out or making you feel anxious, just know that you're not alone. This is true for most of us. And there are things you can do to improve your relationship to your home. There are actually a lot of resources in Baltimore, and I am one of them. And Refuge Design Workshop is one of them. Check it out. It's here for you, and we'd love to help.
I'm so glad you said that. And I love that. I think people can be sitting in these small spaces and you just feel overwhelmed and you don't know where to start. So I love that you're giving people really practical tools, how you can assess your space and draw out floor plans, and really what will be useful for so many people.
I'm glad you think so. Thank you so much, Jen. It's a pleasure to meet you.